welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the political situation at this time as the main political parties at this time want to come to some sort of an agreement as far as the business of making government is concerned. Of course, this week will be crucial in the kind of talks that are expected between the main political parties. We saw the MQM meet the PMLN, and of course that meeting and its ramifications overall as far as the PPP is concerned with the PMLN, the coalition and the kind of shape that will manifest itself as far as the main political parties are concerned. Of course, we'll be talking about the effects of the elections as we speak, as far as the nation itself is concerned, the voting having been concluded, overall the shape of the parliament and what it will mean for stability also. All of these are important questions at this time. Now that it necessitates more than one party being, of course, a coalition, which is now an acknowledgement as far as all the main and the numbers, of course, dictate that to be so. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Ummar Ziauddin. Thank you so much for being with us today. We have Dr. Niaz Murtaza. Thank you for joining us. Irfan Ghauri, who is a political analyst. Thank you for being with us. And we'll have other guests during the course of the program. Ummar, there's a, overall, of course, like we were saying, it's that kind of, the numbers dictate that, there has to be a coalition. What kind of a shape do you think it's going to manifest between the PPP, PMLN? Of course, the process of negotiations have now started.
I think it's a moment of reflection for these two major political parties that they did not return with a clear mandate to govern. I understand that PP performed well in Sindh, PTI, or candidates backed by PTI performed well in KP, and in Punjab, PMLN seems to be emerging as a clear winner. But in the center, the fact that they could not return with a clear mandate shows lack of faith from the people in these major political parties. And perhaps because a lot of new voters came in and they need to improve in their communications for them to connect with the new voter that's joined our electorate. A hung parliament is never good for policies, for the tough decisions, because there's a lot of consensus building. If it is more of PDM2, I think people are going to suffer.
But is it more of, let me go to Dr. Niaz on this also. Dr. Niaz, can you hear me? Dr. Niaz?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Dr. Niaz, do you think it's more, a word that Ummar here used is, is it more of PDM2? Do you think it's more of PDM2? Because of course it's going to be, it is a lot of amalgam again of MQM, of course, PPP, PMLN we're looking at as far as the main coalition partners. Do you think that it's going to become again that kind of makeup?
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's looking right now. I mean, there is the fact that, there is another partyless party, which, independents have about 90 plus, but then the most seats. But then the fact is that neither that party is talking to other parties for a coalition, nor are other parties talking to it. So that's one fact. So if you take that one out, then yeah, if you go for, the second and the third, then you of course have to, collect at least half a dozen parties. So it will be the same, PMLN will be the biggest party, PPP will be second biggest, and then, MQM will have to be there, Q League will have to be there, and then,
Niaz, what happens as far as ownership is concerned? Because we saw what happened with the PDM, before the elections with the PPP, for example, the PPP leadership saying that they were not, taking a step back from acknowledging, that they were very much a part of the coalition, that they were very much a part of the makeup of and the system of governance as far as, the PDM was concerned. In terms of acknowledging and taking responsibility, does it become difficult when there's so much amalgamation, in your opinion?
Well, the big difference would be that PDM government only had 16 months. So it was caught in a trap that it had to implement, an IMF program, and then it had to go to an election immediately. So, it was just, caught in a bind how to, meet these competing demands. Now, the thing is that, this government, at least theoretically, will have 5 years. So there is this possibility that they can spend, the first 2 or 3 years, implementing the IMF program, and then getting out of it and still having about 2 years where, they can provide some relief to the people. And that's what had happened in 2013 with PMLN. They implemented the IMF program for 2 or 3 years, and then, they went on with their expansionary policies. So that is the only relief. But then the question is whether, such different parties and so many different parties can last for 5 years or not. That will be the real test. And then
Yeah, sir, I'm going to go to, let me go to Ali Rashid of the PPP before I go to Irfan Saab. Ali, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Ali, there's a, what I earlier asked, I think is a question essentially from the PPP. When we saw electioneering, we saw politicking, of course, which is necessary for any political party. Now that we are looking at perhaps a coalition again between at least the major players, which are the PPP and the PMLN, as the numbers dictate, do you think it's going to be, do you think all the parties are going to be able to take ownership of this governance when this happens? Of course, MQM also, PPP also, PMLN also, overall the kind of what the numbers are dictating at this time.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. I feel that the numbers, I think no one party can actually form the government, and I think in the larger interest of the country, every stakeholder will have to sit down together and work out a way how to move forward. I think, as you can see with the stock market and the general sentiment of the public, since it's a hung parliament, people are a bit, there's a lot of political uncertainty, which the country can't afford at the moment. So I'm glad that all the parties which are part of the democratic process are willing to speak to each other and discuss that how should we move forward and how should things be dealt with. So I think,
in your opinion, are the modalities of governance between the PPP and the PMLN going to be very different from what they were during the PDM time?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think when you're working together, let it be any party or let it be any organization or even two people, when they start a working relationship, there's a learning curve. When you understand each other, you understand what you dislike about their policies or the way of working. Similarly, I think while we were in PDM and also how we conducted our election campaign, there were many things which we were unhappy about, how things were dealt with. We were not happy with the inflation, and we weren't happy how the finance ministry was dealt with. I think Chairman Bilal was quite concerned about the fact that we were unable to deliver properly like we should have. So I think any discussion or deliberation which takes place will be around, at least from People's Party, it'll be around how can we work together to give the public relief, how can we counter inflation, how can we work on the economy, and that's going to be our prime focus. And as you've seen in the election campaign, the only party which was able to give a manifesto and a proper economic plan that this is how we want to go about things to make things easier for the general public, for the awam hai, how to give them relief, because they are the ones which are actually suffering. So we actually were the only party which actually gave a roadmap. So if PMLN is willing to come on board and wants to talk about things how to, and I'm sure they would also want to, I'm sure they learned from their mistakes in the past. So I'm hopeful for the progress of Pakistan that we're able to do so, come together and come to consensus and help Pakistan and We, you know,
let me come back to Ali on
yeah.
that note. Irfan Saab, as far as the modalities between the PPP and the PMLN is concerned, from the meetings yesterday also, what do you expect now?
Thank you, Mahrukh. Yes, of course, it's a very interesting situation and a very challenging situation as well, because as you have mentioned in all the panelists also, you have mentioned that it would be for sure it would be a coalition government. And in that coalition government, there can be, many sort of arrangements that are on the table, and everybody. When we talk about everybody, I'm saying the political parties, which we mentioned earlier, PMLN, People's Party, even the NQM. When it's in a situation where everybody needs the other, they all would try to get maximum share from the pie. That is actually the case right now. I mean, when we talk about giving relief to the people, or manifestos, or those things, yes, of course, they should be the priority. But right now, I think, pragmatically speaking, this is what is going on. And both of them, the two major partners in the last PDM government, they, of course, both of them, they are weighing their options, who should be, leading this position. But at the same time, I think when we are discussing these people, we should also, if we talk about democracy, if we talk about the principles, then we should also realize that there is another group. And that group of independents is backed by a certain party. And ignoring them, or, like what we have seen, that some of them, they have already joined us. There have been statements that they are in contact, or the political parties are reaching out to them to join their ranks. So I think that would not entail any good good situation in the longer term, because the mandate that we have seen, the way the people voted, the situation on ground, from especially in KPK and Punjab, it was very clear, and that was where especially the youth, the way they came out, and the way they voted
that
for
third
that
factor is
party.
concerned. That's I think the important question here. I'm going to go to Ummar here with that. Ummar, there is, as far as this question is concerned, how would you respond to this third factor, the factor of independence, the fact that, of course, there are those that are affiliated and there are those that are not affiliated. At this time, it doesn't look like the ones that are affiliated. We don't know. I mean, there is, we've just seen somebody who was affiliated, it seems, with, a certain political party join and go to the other side, and there's no law barring that. But overall, it seems like, what happens to that third factor?
So two things, Mahrukh. I think, and we've seen from the conversation already, that there's lack of ownership. You brought this point earlier. Bilawal Saab, with due respect to him, speaks about big government and small government in the same breath. He's talked about dissolving federal departments, and at the same time mentions that he wants to give away free electricity. If they really wanted ownership, they would not be criticizing the finance minister of the PDM regime. They would have asked for the finance ministry this time around. I don't really see them asking for it this time again as well. Secondly, to answer your question, I don't really see this third factor as independence, because this is PTI, and this is the largest party that's emerged out of 2024 elections, and by convention they have the right to form the government.
But what happens
because they're not talking to anybody, because of their absolutist politics, whatever we call it, it's unlikely that they will form a government on their numbers, but the mandate that's returned is of PTI. Secondly, I don't see them as purely independent candidates, because Form A, Elections Act.
But does the law see them as independent candidates?
Yes. The declaration that they've signed in the nomination forms is that they are PTI candidates. So defection clause applies should these gentlemen and women defect from PTI.
But we've just had somebody who was from, I think, in Lahore join the PMLN, who was, I think, Information Secretary earlier.
So I'm not sure about the individual.
I can update you on the name, I think, in a little while.
Because if there is a defection that's taken place, the law will take its course.
But it's not. I don't think that they are being treated as candidates who can or cannot, or can defect.
But that's just the conversation in the media. That's not a legal conversation. The law will be interpreted by the courts. You think that this will apply to all candidates who have affiliation with PTI, who in their nomination form A, have reduced in writing that they represent PTI. It's a declaration that they give.
Wasim Qadir.
So if Wasim Qadir had mentioned in his declaration that he is a candidate from PTI, the defection clause will apply. He'll lose his seat.
I think he defeated Rohail Askar, Wasim Qadir, who was information secretary for PTI. Yes.
So Mahrukh, the gentleman will lose his seat.
So in a secretary law, I think. So I'm just saying that there, and I think it's openly being said. I don't know. In your opinion, the legal question of defection is open to these people.
People who, in their declaration.
But why were they treated as independents as far as the election was concerned then?
It's only to the extent of ballot paper. Mahrukh, on the ballot, PTI was not there. They did not form the intra-party elections.
I think then that's a question that needs clarification.
If I can complete it, that does not mean the party has dissolved. The party dissolves under Section 212 of the Elections Act. But
why is the PTI then talking about joining other political parties to get their nominated seats, which is something that the leadership of the PTI themselves is saying? Isn't that true? Let me come back to you on that.
Yeah.
Dr. Niaz, isn't that true that the PTI itself is talking about joining other political parties to get their nominated seats at this time? If the position was that they were looking at themselves as a political party, then they could not very well join another political party.
Well, that's where, our laws are so unclear. Yes, I think PTI definitely is looking at these options, but then I still feel that, they should make a try. They should go back to courts and make this argument that, they were not dissolved. And if, somebody had written in their nomination papers that they are PTI candidates, then they should be treated so. But again, our laws are very unclear, and I think this will go before the courts and decided by the Supreme Court. The issue is that, one way or the other,
the PTI needs to get a clarification on this ASAP, because it is essentially their party. That is, it seems at this time we've seen. Ali, we've seen, I'd like to include you in the discussion also. We've seen the independence. We've seen the fact that, political parties talking about independence. We've seen the fact the political parties talking about getting the independents to join, and saying, and not just not affiliate.
Those that are not. Did go to the Election Commission of Pakistan with that point. They should be treated as a PTI candidate, but ECP refused him at least. So it's not that they have completely given up on that option too. So let's see what they try. I think this is one option that they should certainly try to, make sure that, people who ran on PTI tickets do remain loyal to them. But then there is still the issue that, this biggest party, neither is it making an effort to be, included in a coalition, nor is anybody else approaching them. It's in a moral sense, it's right to say that, it's their right to form the government. But since they don't have a majority, they also have to make an effort. They have to approach other parties, encourage them to join them. They are not doing that, and other parties are also just completely ignoring them. So this will be a factor of...
I think that, I don't know how true that is. Ali, wouldn't you? I mean, of course, overall, we've seen the PMLN also talk about independence. Whether they choose to join them or not, but that's a very real factor. And I think all political parties have acknowledged that there are independents, and that, they would, of course, like the independents to join in terms of the numbers at this time, no?
Yeah, as independents, but they're not talking to the party. They should talk to its leadership. They should talk to its leadership rather than individual independents.
That's what I'm saying. But the status itself is unclear, right?
The status is unclear. That's true. But, from a moral and political sense, it's very clear. They belong to that party. And if they want to be moral and politically high ground...
I think I'm going to come back to you. I think that question is for Ali now, as of course, being part for the PPP also. Ji, Ali.
I believe that all the independents have to join a party within 3 to 4 days And I think some independents have already started joining different parties, let it be PPP, let it be PMLN. As for if they were PTI, if these independents are actually PTI or not, I think there's a gray area, and let's see how many of them are actually willing to join different parties. So I think this debate about if they are PTI or not will be secondary. Once if they actually are deciding to leave PTI and join other parties, that's what will decide the fate of what will happen in the National
But the
Assembly.
question is a legal one, right? That if they are PTI
Yeah.
and they do decide to go elsewhere, then there's a defection clause here.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. But see, that's what I'm saying. It's a gray area. When I said there's a gray area, I meant by legally speaking, they may have contested, like there was Akram Raja who contested the seat, but they didn't write that he's a PTI Umeedwar. They said he's an independent. Similarly, they didn't contest election on the election symbol, which is of PTI or of not PTI. So there's a big question mark and gray area there. I think that needs to be interpreted. But as for now, the willingness of these independents who are willing to join, I think that process has already been started. And I feel that they do have some green signal from their legal counsels who have legally assessed the situation and have told them that you may go ahead with it. It should not affect, because, if you defect, you can lose your party you can lose your seat, you can be de-seated
As far as
for crossing the floor.
Ali,
But
earlier
I
on,
would
of
also
course,
like
we
to
saw.
answer. I would also like to answer previously. I don't know, some analyst sitting in the sitting at the studio had mentioned something about Chairman Bilawal Bhutto Zardari Saab mentioning about free electricity and etc. But he's not talking about they're not asking about the finance ministry, although they're saying they don't want DAR, but they're not. What I mean, is he privy to these uh, behind the scenes mediations and discussions and deliberations which are taking place? What makes him so sure that we haven't asked for the finance ministry is my question to him.
Have you?
Have we not?
No, that's a question
I
to
think
my question.
I think it's a question. I think it's a general question at this time whether the PPP
but I didn't.
whether the
He didn't.
PPP gentlemen
He made
whether the PPP
he made a
is
statement.
right. Okay.
He made a
Fair
statement
enough.
that Bilawal that we haven't asked.
Ali, I want to
But it is
move
a
on.
statement, not a question.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, your point is right here. I will come back to you. Let me go to let me go to Irfan Ghauri Saab, and then I'll come back to you. Irfan Saab, there is, do you think that at this time when we talk about making government, when we are talking about, there's a lot in the field at this time. But when we ask these main political parties, and I'm not saying, I mean, that is the mandate. There's no other two opinions on that. Then, the kind of picture that emerges, and again, I want to talk about this, does it mean even when there is a time, of course, it's an elected mandate, it's a mandate that is, of course, for 5 years, and but for these political parties with so different ideologies, for them to work together, how do you look at that?
Yeah, Mahrukh, of course. I mean, this is for sure that it's a big mandate, and that would require a coalition. As we discussed, that there might be many forms of that, and in such a situation where it's a coalition, it's not a very easy thing. Even earlier on, we had the coalition government, and we saw that those there were difficulties in running the affairs of the government, but somehow they managed. But of course, then you have to compromise those things. But here I'll go back again to the question that which we were discussing earlier. That yes, these people who were elected as independent, in this assembly there would be two types of independents. One are the genuine independents who didn't have any backing. But here, when we talk about the largest chunk of the people who have come as independents, they are clearly backed by a political party, had they not been backed by that political party, I don't think there would be, uh, any of them maybe would be able to turn to the party. Yes, the legal questions, keep the legal question aside. When we talk about stability, when we talk about, uh, values of democracy, when we talk about the political parties that they say, and even Nawaz Sharif Sahab, in his speech, in his victory speech, he said, we accept the mandate of all the parties, and he also mentioned that the independents as well. Then we had that Charter of Democracy, if you remember, where these bigger political parties, they had agreed. Because when we assessing the situation today, we don't know after 2 years, 3 years, after 5 years, if such a situation emerged. But if we would keep doing what we have been doing right now or what we have been trying to do right now, then I don't think we will strengthen democracy in this country. Yes, coming to power, it's a different thing. The parties, sometimes one party will be coming to power, the other say, this is how it is in democracy. But not recognizing their mandate, I think that is something unjust. That is something where
Irfan Saab, I think the mandate itself is unclear. When we say that recognizing the mandate itself is unclear. Ummar, when we talk legally, the legal question, because it is, PTI itself has said that one of the options that they are considering is joining another political party to get their reserved seats. Because as you know, I think the Election Commission has said that they don't have reserved seats at this time.
Yeah.
Because they are not part of a political party. So the status of PTI at this time, whether after the symbol, what was it limited to, or was it limited at all, or for all intents and purposes, are they not a political party? Are they independents? Because we've seen, as far as affiliated independents or unaffiliated independents, the question is they're being treated as independents.
So Mahrukh, in the political arena, the mandate is not vague at all. It is hung parliament, but the mandate is clear. People who voted for these candidates that were backed by PTI, they knowingly voted for these candidates. So it's very clear in the political arena. In the legal arena, like I stated earlier, and your other participants agreed as well, it is up for grabs. It will be interpreted by the courts. Just because Chairman PTI has made a statement does not mean it's legally tenable. Should he, even have made the statement or not is, up to him. I'm not going to defend him.
But they don't have reserved seats.
Yes, they don't, and this is something that they should contest. I think they have reserved seats. But the issue is, the bigger issue here is, for PTI or any party in their position at this stage, to be fair to them, they will be considering all options.
Right.
But somebody who voted for PTI, would they necessarily want them to see being merged into another smaller party? That's a political death for them.
But what do you foresee as the future then? Do they remain a part of, a separate part of the parliament?
They should sit in the opposition.
This whole block.
Yeah.
You see that as the future for them?
It is one of the options. If you're not talking to other people to form a government, you have a lot of question marks on your status post-elections. One possible and very good option with PDM2 coming into play is sitting on the opposition benches, be a good formidable opposition. It is essential for this democracy too, no?
Ali, there is, also the possibility, of course, it is up to the PTI affiliated independents, but for them to become a part of this governance and the structure of governance by becoming a part of this PDM, but retaining their status as of course, a different political group, if they can do that or not. Because of course, we are looking at a PPP and PMLN and MQM and maybe other parties' coalition at this time. Do you think that's an option at all in terms of the main political parties like the PPP, for example, agreeing to that?
Look, anything is possible. I think in the interest of the country, we are willing to weigh out all options and deliberate, discuss, and come to consensus. You never know. PTI-backed independent candidates, there are so many of them. Who knows? Maybe only People's Party and PPP and People's Party and the independents might sit together, and we might not even need PMLN and other parties at all. because if you look at the numbers, that's what they suggest. Otherwise, all other parties can sit together and work together. Also, there are so many things. We are in the
You
middle
are
of
open to working
deliberation.
together with PTI affiliated independents.
We are, yeah, we are open for everything. We are open for anybody who wants to work in the interest of the country, who wants to see Pakistan progress. We do understand, because of a lot of political uncertainty in the past, a lot of confrontation, and a lot of personal egos which were at play. This country suffered a lot, so we don't want to go down that road again. We want to make things better. We want to fight inflation. We want to bring it down. We want to work on our economy. We want political stability in the country
Do you want
where
to
we can
move
actually
towards,
deliver.
will the PPP move towards making a bid for the government in the center, in the federation? Or Bilawal Bhutto Zardari also said that he's going to respect the mandate of the way that it's been given by the people. But you don't see the PPP making a bid for the federation then?
Well, we are looking to be part of the federation, and depends under what terms and conditions, right? It depends what is being offered, what has been decided, how will it work, the modalities and the technicalities. If we feel it is something appealing to us, and if we feel it's in the interest of the country, we will definitely consider it. And we do have our reservations about how things were dealt in Karachi. I think it would be unfair for me not to mention that in Karachi, People's Party had won all majority of the seats, and which were stolen from us. We also have that in mind, and we have reservations against that also. So many things are being discussed. I think it's a bit premature to make claims. I can only tell you what I feel is happening. I can only give you my personal analysis. I can only tell you what my party leadership is under discussion. But what will happen in the end totally depends on all the other parties, what they have in mind also. Once we hear them out and see if whatever they're saying is making sense, if whatever they're wanting is acceptable, and if it's fair, and if it's something which will end of the day benefit the common man, and it's in the interest of the country, we will definitely consider it and work on it.
Fair enough. Irfan Saab, how many people, like Ali is saying, do you expect there to be, as far as the PMLN is concerned, whether party affiliated or not party affiliated, how many independents do you see joining the PMLN?
Yeah, Mahrukh, am I audible?
Gigi, you are.
Yes. Mahrukh, this we can't say. I mean, but that's what that's what it's being under discussion everywhere, and that's what the on the ground, that's what has been going on, that the two bigger parties, they are trying to make contacts with these independents. And of course it's a legal question that their status as independents, but my contention was and is that for a healthy democracy, we all should consider them as an entity, as a separate entity, not as individuals. I mean, the category which are backed by the PTI or by a certain political party. But I think not. I mean, those especially the ones who know that when they would.
Irfan Saab, let me interject. I think in the interest of certainty, when there is so much uncertainty afoot, there should be a clarification on what is their status, whether they are independents, whether they are not independents, whether they are party affiliated independents, and what is the purview within which they can exercise their discretion with regard to joining or not joining a particular political party. Those things, those questions are extremely important for the kind of certainty that is now needed, because there is so much uncertainty at this time with regard to so much else that this is just going to add to that.
Yes, Mahrukh, and that uncertainty, it came because of the decision from the ECP that PTI's election was not as per the standards they had mentioned in their own constitution, and then it was of course endorsed by the Supreme Court. Now these are the two I think bodies who are the constitutional bodies and the very esteemed bodies of this country, that they should immediately, I mean, from tomorrow onwards, of course, everything will be open, and the courts and election commission, they should clarify the situation and to resolve it. Otherwise, we would be discussing all these in with ifs and buts. Once this thing is clear that what would be the PTI's fate and what would be, how these reserves.
If the defection clause clearly applies to them, then they're definitely off. Then they don't have an individual status.
Yes,
then they can either choose or not join, choose to join or not join. The coalition as not as separate entities, but as one political party or one group or whatever one may call it. So then a lot of uncertainty then ends at that point, right?
I totally agree with you. That is the only solution. But right now, what it seems is we can say that they are backed by a political party, but still they are independent. But with this independence are in a very peculiar situation. It's not a normal independent category. So that has to be immediately. It has to be interpreted either by the courts. Of course, that is the forum where I think the final decision would be taken. But it should come in, as soon as possible, so that we, come out of this confusion, and even the political parties and themselves, they would be in a better position to have their own whatever their plans are and how they negotiate.
In terms of the numbers will also emerge then, because otherwise we'll be looking at a lot of if, buts, can this happen, can this not happen, and that is unfortunately not going to go well with where we are at this time. Niaz Sab, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Niaz Sab, what do you expect? I mean, of course, I'm going to ask Ali this also, but what do you expect as far as the PPP and the PMLN, coalition to look like? The main political parties, of course, other political parties are also going to be part of this.
Well, I don't think it's about, the interest of this party or that party. It's about the interests of Pakistan. And the interests of Pakistan at this crucial juncture lie in political stability if it has to deal with its huge economic security and foreign policy challenges. Pakistan has not had political stability since 2017 after this Panama thing came up and was exploited, and it desperately needs political stability. And if you don't include the biggest group in parliament accommodated, then you are not going to have political stability, especially since that group is very vocal in urban areas, on social medias, in the expatriate groups. So it's incumbent, and I would say, the ball lies in PPP's court. It acts as, a principal party. Bilawal Bhutto, projects himself as a state person, and to be fair to him, he often makes very principled statements. So it's up to him to say that, look, this is the biggest party. Pakistan is not going to have political stability. So we will approach the leadership of PTI and see if we can come up with some accommodation with them. If PTI rebuffs them, that is different. Then, PPP can say, we tried and we failed. And it's quite likely that the PTI might rebuff them. But I think some attempt should be made to, accommodate PTI people into the political system. Otherwise, Pakistan can forget the political stability that it needs in the future to deal with all its problems.
Ali, do you see the PPP making such an overture?
Absolutely. I think People's Party right now is the most politically mature party there is. Our leader, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari Saab, has demonstrated the kind of political maturity and statesman-like behavior in the past few months. You can see the decision-making and his statements have been beyond, you can't appreciate them enough. And definitely we'll play our role where possible to make sure as an
Zardari also said that he would not be part of any coalition with the PMLN, didn't he?
Yes, he did say that. He definitely did say that. Political stability, as we said, is the core prime objective of ours right now. That's the key, because if there is political stability, there will be foreign investment, there will be businesses, the economy will be doing better. IMF, we'll have to, as soon as this new government comes, we'll have to go into a new IMF program. If there is uncertainty, if there is political instability, these things will get undermined, and we would definitely not want that. As for PMLN, I think we are in discussions, but as I also mentioned earlier, if you look at the numbers, maybe we don't have to include PMLN in our setup. If the PTI-backed Independents and People's Party come together, we might not need many other parties. But that's just me speculating, right? But on the other hand, look, as I said, his past experience with the PDM, Bilawal Saab has said that he would not want to work with the PMLN, at least the old PMLN, which did not come through with their promises and was not able to bring down the inflation or give relief to the common man. But that being said, if PMLN is, as I said earlier, depends on what terms and conditions. If PMLN is able to convince us that this time around it won't be the way it was earlier, like it was in the PDM times, so we may consider, reevaluating and revisiting a decision to not work with them.
Fair enough. Ummar, do you think, as a lawyer, we don't know what the situation is, but if it is indeed, if they are allowed to become part of, as a group even, of course, as a party affiliated group, and they choose to become part of governance, part of government with, for example, a party like the PPP, do you think there's a chance that it can work? Because, of course, it's the mandate of the people, and the people want to see them in the parliament.
And PTI should make all possible efforts to form the government. They've not been, so even if they claim that they've been denied another 20-30 seats, they still cannot form the government on their own. So they should respect, like you suggested, the mandate, work with all stakeholders. People's Party and even Pakistan Muslim League is an important stakeholder in the system. And it's a good word that he used, that People's Party has matured. Other political players need to mature as well, because eventually you'll be working in national interest with all the stakeholders possible on minimum common agenda, on the policies, on the issues to take this country forward from this crisis that we have.
Do you think there will be this legal clarification that is really needed at this time? You think that we'll see one soon? Or do you think somebody will go to the courts on this?
So Salman Akram Raja's ECP has already taken a view that you're not a political party. You can't, PTI does not exist. That's the view that they've taken, and it will be challenged, and others would want to sort of contest that as well. I think it's up for the courts, and I will not preempt what the court decide. But what I can say is, and consider it as an informed guess, Mahrukh, what happened from May 9 to February 8 is a different climate. Post February 8 is a different climate altogether, and we will see that change being reflected in our court's decisions also.
Okay, that's a bold statement to make. Thank you so much for being with us today. Ummar Ziauddin, thank you for joining us. Dr. Niaz Murtaza, thank you for being with us today. Ali Rashid, thank you for your time. Overall, at this time, of course, as far as all major political parties are concerned, when we look at the PMLN, with perhaps the largest share at this time, the PPP, with the second largest one, and other political parties, the party-affiliated independents also, each party has a specific share within which they can exercise their jurisdiction, so to speak, and of course exercise their freedom to form a government. And perhaps the best thing is that all the political parties should do so. And become a part of the system, and perhaps work together towards healing, towards making those decisions, towards inculcating those reforms, towards making those changes that are perhaps needed. It is not certainly the perfect situation, and I think all political parties acknowledge that. Everyone would have liked either a simple majority or even more than that, but it is what it is, and the people have voted, and the people have clearly given a mandate that has to be respected at this time. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.